Welcome to Speak Jesus. I'm Heather.
And I'm Katie.
And today we're going to be talking about idols.
Yes, having idols, different idols in your life.
Idols in your life.
Okay, yes.
Well, before I was a Christian, idols were not even a topic of questioning.
Yeah, I didn't think about
it wasn't
idols
talked about
any more than watching Survivor.
Yeah, I didn't even, when I thought of idol, I was thinking American Idol.
Yeah.
And I didn't really.
I wouldn't think anything in my life would be an idol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the world's view is, well, they don't talk about idols because they don't talk about sin.
Yes.
There's no such thing as sin.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but it was pretty quickly into our relationship with the Lord that we discovered that we had been actually making idols of our children.
Yes. As stay-at-home moms, that's a very common occurrence, actually. So we want to talk about the order of the household, right?
Yes. And what it's supposed to be, how God created it, which didn't make sense to me initially because,
right. Me either.
I mean, how can loving somebody how can you love somebody too much, right?
Right.
How can you be over loving?
Yes. Scripture says, but there is one thing that I want you to know. The head of every man is Christ, right? So that is God, and then the man, and then the head of woman is man, and the head of Christ is God. So yeah,
that did not make sense to me when I became a Christian. And it wasn't until I put it into practice that I understood why God's order is the way it is. And if we honor that order, it does produce fruit in your marriage.
Yes.
In yourself.
Your children too. Your children are your fruit.
Yeah, absolutely.
As mothers, as human mothers, it's natural for us to, everything goes after your children. Your children are first priority, first and foremost thing in your life. You always hear the saying, oh, my children are my whole life, or I would die without my children, or I would be dead if it wasn't for my children, right? I've said that multiple times.
When I hear those things, and that sounds good to the world, and
it sounds like a loving mother, right?
Right. But, not to change the topic, but one of those comments, what they trigger in me now is, what a burden to put on your child, though.
Right. But you don't think
to live for them.
Yes.
Like that's your whole life.
Yeah.
And yeah. But yeah, reality is that the world doesn't revolve around our kids.
And that just comes back to, the order, the way God has it intended. God doesn't want that weight to be on our children. So, it just comes right back to why he made the order the way he did.
Yes.
That order he created isn't because, the man is better, right? The man is greater than woman, right?
Oh,
that's not
honey.
why.
Behind every successful man
is a strong, godly woman.
Absolutely.
Yes. No, God created that order because he wanted to create rounded out individuals, right? Righteous individuals. And
let's get into, not to cut you off, but let's get into, for those who may need a refresher, what is an idol?
What is an idol?
How do we idolize our children if we don't know? I mean, we didn't understand what an idol was, really.
Right.
What is an idol? An idol is anything that becomes heavier or equal to importance as God.
Yes.
Anything that becomes heavier than God or becomes an equal importance to God in your life, that is what an idol is. And the Bible specifically says in the second commandment that we are not to have an idol.
Yep. It says actually specifically in Exodus 20 verse 4, you must not make for yourself an idol of any kind or an image of anything in the heavens or on the earth or in the sea. So it's anything.
Anything. I actually got a little list of some examples of idols.
Some examples, yeah.
Your
career,
TV, your career. Listen, you ever think about how in the center of our living area, our living room is the TV?
Right.
It's, that's a very common idol. Entertainment is one of the biggest gateways, but
yes.
Career, family, money, culture, power, possessions, TV,
yep.
Approval, approval of people rather than God's approval, comfort, success, fame, pleasure, and ultimately yourself and your fleshly desires.
Yes.
Now listen, God's order is not cruel and it's not mean.
No.
But God is a God of order. And he doesn't ask us to pick, Jesus or your husband or your children or your husband.
Pick one, right?
He asks us to put them in the right order.
Yes. And none of these things are, other than God, none of these things are of greater importance, right? They all play a very specific, important role in your life.
Yes.
Right. And if we're backing up a little and taking it back to, moms, because that's what both are, stay-at-home moms. And if we back it up a little bit, the reason we want to be good moms, right? We want to be the best that we can possibly be. And so, coming all back to this order again and not idolizing your children and putting them above everything, coming back to this order that God intended, it makes you a better mother. Yeah. You're making yourself a rounded mom, a rounded person, a rounded woman, right?
Yep.
And you're able to give yourself more to your children. You're able to give them what they need.
Yeah. So one of the things we do is when the household revolves around your children, the marriage suffers.
Yes.
Your relationship with God suffers.
Yes.
And ultimately we are so solely focused on making our children comfortable and happy that not only are we risking raising little narcissists, but we are risking, what we're doing is we're not trusting God.
Yes.
And we're not giving our children the opportunity to build their own walk, their own relationship with the Lord, their own testimony. When we make our kids too comfortable, we are essentially robbing them of their growth. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge thing. God comes first. And God created the family. The very first ever of God's family was Israel. For an example, and Israel actually was God's first family, and they were his chosen people.
Right.
And God wanted them to be the light of the world.
Right.
And, they kind of dropped the ball.
What did they do? They made an idol right away.
Lots of idols. All right.
Right away. They felt abandoned and made an idol.
Mm-hmm. God's not cruel. He has an order for a reason. And if we, trust, which means, and it's not easy. It's like faith. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it doesn't come naturally all the time.
Right.
We actually have to choose it. And God is asking us to release our children to him.
Yes.
They are safer in his hands.
Yes.
We have to let go of control because as Christians, following Jesus means trusting Jesus and his plan.
Yes.
And so we can hinder that growth and we can get in the way. Now, God has will for all of us that we all be saved and, live to our full potential, but it's not in our own hands that we reach that.
Yes.
It's in God's hands. Now, it's definitely our job to make our children comfortable, but it should not revolve around making our children comfortable.
One thing that I always try to remember is that, these are not really my children. I have 3 and they're not mine. They are gifted to me here on earth. And I have been given that privilege, the most beautiful privilege that a woman can ever receive is to raise children. But these are God's children. And it's my job as a mother to lead them in the way that God would want me to.
Yes.
Yes. And, putting them above everything else is not what he wants.
Yeah. God, his plan is for us to raise up, to bring up godly children that will be a light in the world.
Yes.
And we need to allow that to take place and not hinder that. Essentially, it's not ministry or family. Mm-hmm. It is family and ministry. It is a one thing. Family is ministry.
Yes.
I mean, it is the first ministry.
It all starts at home.
It all starts at home. Yes. And a lot of times, my mother will say, she was saved when I was a teenager, but one of the things she did wrong would be that she believed that the church would actually do all the work for her.
Yes. Right.
And her relationship with the Lord was very separate from her and child rearing. Mm-hmm. It was a very separate thing. It's not ministry and family.
Right. They're not separate. They should be together.
They should be together.
Right.
It's ministry and family.
That's not saying that if you're a parent that you are not supposed to be in ministry and out ministering to people, but it all starts at home,
Absolutely.
If you follow that order and you're, doing it the way God intended, then essentially as Christians, your family values should all align,
Yes. So our family is our ministry. We are a family on a mission.
Yes.
That's what we are. It's not missions and family. We are a family. We are the first ministry. Our first ministry is our household.
Because your first fruit should be your children as a parent.
Oh, yeah. How do we identify idols in our lives? Well, and how do we eliminate idols in our lives?
Right,
well,
right.
It's not about always eliminating something.
Right. It's not about eliminating. Right.
It's about making time for God, which looks different for all of us. Yes. Katie and I were discussing when we were prepping for this episode, I was discussing how, one of my biggest issues for me is time. Right. I'm so busy. I got 6 kids. I got 5 of my own, but I'm helping raise a 6th. And so 6 kids, a husband, 2 dogs, a guinea pig, 2 cats, 3 fish tanks,
a guinea pig.
Ministry. Right. It's busy. Sports. I got my kids. I got 5 kids going to 4 different schools, y'all. Yeah. My brain is mush.
Where do you fit time in for God? How do you do it?
So for me personally, I talked to our Pastor Reggie recently about how I needed prayer for, that I really needed to get back into my one-on-one, focusing on, spending quality fellowship with the Lord. Right. I'm doing all this ministry. I'm at church. I'm going to these meetings. I'm doing all this stuff, but I really need to hear God's voice because I'm getting busy. You
still need quality time.
Yes.
You can be in church, 7 days a week and still not feel that quality
that's not
time.
A personal,
yes.
You got to have your
all
personal.
All about building a personal relationship.
Yeah.
Right?
So I was asking the pastor for prayer regarding my time. And I've been saying repeatedly how I wish there was like 2 of me, 3 of me. But one of the things he had mentioned was tithing your time. And I really needed to hear that. God, I'm tithing your time. Well, I'll have to share in the future about my testimony with tithing monetarily, which is a great story, but that's for another day. But tithing your time, that was like a foreign concept to me. Tithing your time.
It's just like tithing, like serving. Serving is tithing in a sense as well.
Well, tithing is giving your first fruits, right? But I realized he was right. And he said, if time is your issue, you need to start tithing your time, which means giving the first part of your day to the Lord, and he will make enough time for everything else. Right. And I realized that's something for me that I need to do. I need to discipline myself to get up early, spend that quality time with the Lord, and God will make room for the rest. And then for other people who can do, Katie.
Yeah. For me personally, it's not about getting up early because then I won't have quality time. I'm not a morning person. So, because, my children, the one that is still home likes to sleep. So, for me, it's about, when I have that slow moment of my day when it's just me and the little guy and he's playing.
When you have some extra time?
Yes. Do I turn on that television and sit and relax and watch a TV show? Or do I get into the Bible? And do I spend some quality time with the Lord? What
Making
do I
the
choose?
conscious choice.
Yes, consciously choosing to give myself to God before I give myself to, myself.
Absolutely. And so, like we said, it's not always about eliminating. Though there may be an idol in your life, you have to eliminate. If you're looking to anything else other than Jesus for blessing, guidance, help, that's got to go. That's like absolutely rabbit feet. Yes. Good luck, rabbit feet and
rosaries,
charms,
statues, anything that you may be praying to.
Obviously, we know divination is not a good thing. Yeah. Horoscopes, all that.
But coming away from that and coming back into the Christian sense of it, like Heather said, it's not about eliminating things that you like. Because if you give yourself to God first, all these things will naturally fall into order.
Coming back to, you just reminded me of when I was in driver's ed, and the driving instructor would always say, keep 10 and 2, keep your focal point where you want to go. Because if your eye catches something over here, you're going to start naturally drifting that way.
Yes.
So, it's like that. You keep your eyes and you keep your main focus on Jesus.
Yes.
Everything else does naturally come into order for the most part.
Yeah. And if you're like me and you like maybe had something, in your life that maybe shouldn't have been there, like maybe a bad TV show or I don't know.
Something you felt convicted about.
Yeah. But like you weren't actively trying to get rid of it. Well, I just stayed on the path and I stayed in my Bible and I stayed putting, on the path of Jesus, and all those things that I used to like that aren't very pleasing to God, they just kind of naturally fell off.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't have any personal interest in those things anymore.
Sometimes it does take a little bit more self-discipline in some areas. It's not a one size fits all. We're just letting you know what helps us or works for us. And
everybody's walk is different. But if I can help anybody, guide anybody with my experiences, I'm happy to do so. And I'm happy to share those experiences.
Ultimately, anything that takes away from Jesus. One of the things I was before I was a Christian, I was a big hemp supporter. And I would go to, and even after I was a Christian, I wanted to hold on to, THC because I was telling myself and trying to justify that it was a plant and it was natural.
Right.
Well, I'm here to, the truth is that, what I was doing was I'm not saying there's not a place for it medicinally. Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
But I was going to something outside of the Lord for comfort.
In a sense, making it an idol.
Yeah, because it was becoming I was becoming dependent on something.
It was important enough that you went to it first for comfort.
Yes.
So in a sense, it was more important than God, even though you may not have looked at it that way at the time.
And one of the things I had to do was, a really seasoned Christian had told me, Heather, and my Christian family is amazing. They never judged me. Yeah. They just loved me, supported me, and they let me figure it out. I mean, they would tell me things like, before you go and give into your, natural
temptation.
Yeah. One of the things they had told me, go to God first. And eventually, and that advice, keeping your focus on Jesus and your relationship with the Lord, eventually I stopped thinking, I all of a sudden was like, wow, I haven't fell into that old way. I don't have a desire anymore. God did kind of strip that desire from me, but I ultimately did have to throw the things away.
Right.
But it's funny because Satan kept finding a way to bring it back into my life.
Of course.
Or bring it around or tempt me. It was amazing.
That's Satan's job. And, initially,
it really was crazy.
Right.
I don't want to get too, in depth there, but I'll have to share with you or we'll share another time on how Satan just really wanted me to hold on to that idol in my life.
Right.
But we're getting back to, it's not always about eliminating something, but the truth is too much of a good thing can become an idol.
Right.
Something like silly, like Cheetos.
Yeah, Cheetos.
Food can become an idol.
Versus the gym.
When you can't just have one and you just want more. And you're eating for comfort. We eat to live. We do not live to eat.
Yeah, versus the gym, right? So you think of the gym as something.
And nobody corrects you when you're going to the gym every single day.
Because you look at the gym and you think
it's a good thing.
This is great. You can't get too much of it. You can't be too healthy. You can't be too fit. Right? I mean, I suppose if you're like...
But the question is, are you as disciplined about your relationship with Jesus as you are on going to the gym?
Right. So even though that's a good thing, you can't have too much of it if you're putting it before God.
Yeah. Good things are sneaky. Sneaky idols. The gym can be a sneaky idol. Yeah. Clearly, that's not one of my idols. But even a good thing like loving your children.
Yes. Love can be an idol.
Wow. Yeah.
I would never have thought that pre-Christian.
Yeah.
Just like I never have thought that putting my children before
feelings
everything.
Are deceitful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just as, putting my children before everything, I just thought that's what a mom does. I thought that was being a good mom.
I
thought that overly loving my children and loving them so much that I was just being a good mommy.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? I don't even know if it was like, I'm not saying I don't love my children.
But you know what?
But some of it for me was about what people thought of me as a mother.
Oh, yeah.
I cared what people thought.
Right.
Ultimately, praise the Lord that freedom in Christ has set me free from seeking the approval of people.
Right.
Ultimately, now I want the approval of God. I really do want that well done, good and faithful servant when I get to heaven.
Yes.
I really do. Remember, everything in moderation, guys. Pray, talk to God, ask Him to, search your heart and ask God to point out if you are having idols in your life.
Yeah. Not only identifying them, but taking them away. Ask Him for His help putting Him first, because you know what the great thing about God is, He'll do all the work for you as long as you just come to Him and ask Him.
Yeah, He's so good.
Yes.
He's so faithful. And
it's a lot easier than we make it out to be.
Yeah. Well, when you're focusing on what you're doing wrong and what you got to get rid of and what you got to clean up, it's very overwhelming.
Yes. Instead of that, focus on what you need to do right.
Yes.
And then everything else will come.
Yeah, just focus on getting to know Jesus.
Yes.
Just getting to know Him and be in your word. Because remember, this is what keeps us grounded in our faith.
So if there's one thing you take away from this, it's just put Jesus first.
Yeah.
Follow the narrow road.
Yeah. It's not easy, but it is fruitful. It is rewarding.
And it is worth it. It
is so worth it. If you have any questions or comments, drop them below.
Any topics you would like us to discuss?
Yes. Like, follow, share.